All right, let's take a trip way back in time. We're going to dive deep into a single chapter from the book of Genesis. But trust me, this is not just any old chapter. This is the story of one of the most consequential agreements in all of human history, a divine promise that would literally shape the destiny of nations for thousands of years. This is the story of the Abrahamic covenant.
So right off the bat, we're hit with a huge question. How on earth does a 99-year-old man become the father of nations? I mean, it seems to defy all logic, all biology, right? And yet, this is the very foundation of the entire story we're exploring. So how does it happen? Well, it all kicks off with an encounter that changes everything. And it starts with a man named Abram.
99. Just let that number sink in for a second. That's how old Abram was. He wasn't some young guy with his whole life ahead of him. By any possible standard, his and his wife's childbearing years were long, long gone. And it's right here, in this moment of what seems like total impossibility, that something truly monumental is set into motion.
Can you just imagine this scene? You're 99 years old, and you get this direct, divine message. This is the opening statement, the first big offer from God Almighty. And notice that key word right away, covenant. This isn't just a casual promise, This is a formal binding agreement being put on the table. It's basically a sacred treaty.
And the promises being made here, they are absolutely staggering. This is not small stuff. Abram is told he won't just have one son, he's going to become the father of many nations. Actual kings will come from his bloodline. And this covenant, this deal, it isn't a temporary thing. It's declared to be everlasting for all of his descendants. And, as if that's not enough, there's a promise of land, the entire land of Canaan, as a possession forever. This is a destiny-altering deal if there ever was one.
Okay, so you've got this massive, life-altering promise. Where do you even begin to make that a reality? Well, a promise this huge requires a fundamental shift in identity. So the very first step in this new destiny is a powerful symbolic act, the changing of names.
Now this is way more than just a rebrand. Abram's name, which meant exalted father, is changed to Abraham, and the new meaning is literally baked right into the name, father of many nations. His new name is now a constant, daily reminder of the promise. His entire identity is fused with this covenant.
And this transformation wasn't just for him. Nope, his wife Sarai also gets a new name. She goes from Sarai, which means my princess, to Sarah. This elevates her to princess, or in this context, the mother of nations. She's no longer just Abraham's princess. She is now a matriarch for the entire world that's to come. She's a full partner in this incredible destiny.
All right, so we've got the promises and we've got the new identities, but think about it. How do you make an eternal spiritual promise tangible? How do you mark it physically so that it's never forgotten generation after generation? Well, this covenant required a physical sign. So let's just hit pause on that word covenant again. It's easy for us to hear it and just think promise. But in the ancient world, it was so much more than that. These were structured, solemn, almost legally binding agreements. Think of it like a treaty between a king and his people. A covenant involves promises, for sure, but it also involves obligations. It's a two-way commitment, a two-way street.
And that obligation, the physical sign that would permanently mark this agreement in the flesh for all generations to see, was circumcision.
And the instructions for this sign were incredibly specific, and they covered everyone. This wasn't just for some future son. This was for every male in his household. His son Ishmael, anyone born in his house, even those he had bought. It was to be done on the 8th day for newborns, establishing this sign right from the start of life. It was meant to be a permanent physical reminder, passed down through the family line forever.
And just to be absolutely clear, this was not optional. The text doesn't mince words about the stakes here. Anyone who didn't have this sign was considered to have broken the covenant and would be cut off from their people. That really underscores just how serious this obligation was.
So, we've talked about all the divine promises and the commands, but this is where the story gets so incredibly human. Because you have to ask yourself, how would you react when you're faced with something so extraordinary that it just completely defies belief? To really get his reaction, you've just got to look at the numbers again. By the time they're talking about this promised child, Abraham is about to turn 100 years old, and Sarah is 90. These aren't just minor details. They are the very heart of the conflict between having faith and just dealing with human reality.
So what does Abraham do? He falls on his face, which is a sign of deep reverence, right? But internally, he laughs. And it's not a happy laugh. It's a laugh of pure, raw disbelief. He's thinking to himself,
Are you serious? A son for a 100-year-old man, and Sarah is going to have a baby at 90? It is such a raw, honest, and frankly, a very relatable moment of skepticism.
And in that moment of doubt, he does what probably any of us would do. He tries to find a logical workaround. He basically says to God, hey, look, I've already got a son, Ishmael. He's a great kid. How about we just make him the one? He's pleading, if only Ishmael might live under your blessing. He's trying to fit this huge divine plan into a box that makes sense to him.
But God's reply is totally direct and crystal clear. It's a gentle correction, but it is firm. The answer is no. This covenant, this specific promise, isn't about Ishmael. The plan is very specific. Your wife Sarah will bear you a son. He's even given the name, Isaac. And the everlasting covenant will be established with him.
And this is where we see two very different destinies being laid out. Now, it's so important to see that Ishmael is not rejected here. Far from it. He gets his own incredible blessing that he will be fruitful, multiply, and become a great nation with 12 rulers. But, and this is the key distinction, Isaac is the one who is the designated heir of the everlasting covenant. Their paths are different, but both are blessed.
So, after the laughter, after the doubt, and after getting that clarification, what happens next is what's truly remarkable. The text makes a huge point of saying that on that very same day, Abraham acts. He doesn't wait, he doesn't wonder about it, he takes his son Ishmael, who was 13 at the time, and every single male in his household, and they all perform the sign of the covenant. In the end, his obedience was just as swift and total as his initial doubt was human.
So why does this one chapter from thousands of years ago still matter so much? Because this story, the story of Abraham, of this covenant, of his sons Ishmael and Isaac, it becomes a foundational narrative for three of the world's major religions. This single moment echoes through history, shaping identity, faith, and even conflict for billions of people to this very day.
And that really leaves us with something to think about, doesn't it? When a promise is made to be everlasting, what does that actually mean for the future? How did these ancient promises and obligations, sealed in a sacred covenant thousands of years ago, continue to influence and shape the identities, the conflicts, and the hopes of our modern world? It's a powerful question to consider.